Welcome to another episode of Cloud and Clear, SADA's Cloud Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Giglio, and joining me this morning is Senior Vice President of Next Gen Security Sales in North America at Palo Alto. So, Chris, that is a mouthful, but I'm super excited to have you on the show and glad to be talking with you about just all the things you guys are doing there at Palo Alto. So, first, welcome, and then tell me a little bit about your role and what brought you to Palo Alto.
Excellent. Well, Rocky, thank you for having me, and thank you to everyone else who puts the show together. I know it takes a little bit to do these things, and so I appreciate that. And hello to the audience. Okay, my name is Chris Smith, SVP for Next Generation Security, and what that is, it's comprised of a few divisions that Palo Alto has: SASE, Cortex, Prisma Cloud. Yeah. And these are what we used to call speedboats, but have brought them under Next Generation Security. So a little bit about me is that, I've been in cybersecurity like a lot of the folks my age, over 20 years. We'll leave it at that. And one of the reasons... Well, you look better, though. But one of the reasons I joined Rocky is because the past that I have, which happens to be in the SIM market with a company called ArcSight, in the endpoint market, a company we started called Invincia, and of course, another company that I was at where we were doing a lot in DevSecOps and a lot in cloud native applications. That's a lot of my background. And it just so happens that there's only one company in the world that had all of these different divisions that they had planned to bring together, which I now run for North America. So that's kind of why I joined. The thing that I would say, though, that has really taken off since I joined, and by the way, I joined in October 2nd of last year. It's only been a year, but feels like we've covered a lot of distance in just a year, is what we're doing with AI, precision AI, and the data around it, and hardening our, our existing solutions. AI has breathed new life into what we thought was possible in protecting cloud native applications, and the data therein.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you want to hear a little bit more about what's new with AI at Palo Alto, stay tuned to the end of the episode. We got a little teaser for you. But Chris, I guess, middle of October, Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I like, I think every month now, though, there's some awareness of something, which is great. But I definitely lose track of it all. But Cybersecurity Month, I got to stay on top of that one. We've got a series of things going on, from an awareness perspective, helping customers see and understand the different trends in the market today. Obviously, security is always important, always at the forefront of everyone's mind. And you just listed out, your career here in SIM and all these different areas of cloud security and on-prem security. Kind of what do you think should stay at the forefront of everyone's mind? Well, not only to wrap out the end of this year, but trying to roll it into 2025. It's that time of year where we're starting to think about what do we need to focus on next year. What would you say is kind of most important here coming into the next 12 months or so?
Yeah, I would say 12 to 36 months. Our markets, they're not that good at hiding their intent. And I think that's a great thing because it helps us be able to make sure our products are delivering what people need. And the market is usually in one or two macro type of modes. It's either in a mode of expansion or contraction. Right now, the market is, because of the macroeconomic headwinds, in a mode of contraction. And what is it doing? Well, it's transforming from multiple vendors with multiple scanning technologies, preventative technologies, dashboards, agents, and it's walking away from what they've produced, which quite frankly is confusing and conflicting results across a myriad of different teams that maybe didn't already communicate the way the organization's intended. And so our company has sewn together different acquisitions and things we've done organically, from code to cloud to SOC. We're offering one truth, one platform, one contract from one company. And this is for cloud, multi-cloud, as well as on-prem. And when I mentioned platform, I always want to mention that people know that it's bite-sized chunks that we offer this in. We offer the complete solution, but we do it and we meet people where they're at today, and we ensure that we solve the problem they're trying to solve today. And then we're future-proof because we do have the platform, so we can grow with them and where they're going.
Yeah, and let's drill in on that for a moment. You mentioned the bite-sized nature. I think that's super important. You joined in October last year, you said, and so that's kind of right after all these announcements. Say we're changing our strategy. We're trying to, simplify and integrate all these different acquisitions we've made. This being we being Palo Alto in this case. Um, how did you feel about that coming in? And then now you've been there for almost a year. Like, how's it changing? What are you seeing? And then I want to drill a little bit further into some of those bite sizes. But let's start there. Like, you came in
Yeah.
October. Here's this announcement. We're ripping off. We're ripping everything apart. We're going to rebuild this all and integrate everything we've been building for the last several years. How'd you feel about that coming in?
Well, I had a perception because I was in the market, and there were different companies that I knew competed with Palo Alto, in particular at that point, Prisma Cloud. So we knew that there were a lot of different acquisitions, and we knew that they needed to be integrated. What I didn't realize is that the market didn't have an alternative as it relates to a platform for code to cloud to SOC to Palo Alto. First thing I didn't realize, didn't really appreciate how important it was and how ready the market was for it. One. Two, quite frankly, I thought there was a lot of room for improvement from Palo Alto in those integrations. And I thought that the data that I had was current. It was probably about 18 months antiquated data. But what I didn't realize is that with the Darwin release, which came weeks after I joined, so I had nothing to do with it other than being a fortunate benefactor of being with a company that had done this release, is they did an amazing job of sewing it together. So when we say one platform, one company, they do have one truth. So DevOps sees the same things that the people in build and code security and cloud security see. It's the same stuff they're going to see in the SOC. And so it's really afforded people the ability to look at threats, the risk posture, the landscape, the attack surface, and come to agreement across a lot of different groups that normally would be looking at separate, unrelated technologies. And so, anyway, I would say I have a much deeper appreciation for how Palo Alto has put a focus on that, executed against it, and how it's delivered real value in the market.
Yeah, I'm excited about it as well because you're right. There's this overwhelming amount of tools in the market. And everyone you talk to is like, curate now another tool to do this other thing. And sometimes that's appropriate, right? I mean, you've been in the security industry for a while, and sometimes there are companies that do one thing, they do it really, really well. And sometimes you need that, right? Depending on what your organization's doing on the particular application stack. But there's also that can be super overwhelming if you're doing that a lot, right? If you have 100 different tools and they each are specialized in a particular thing. Well, it's great that they specialize in that thing. Someone's got to operate all that, bring all that together, and that's a real challenge. I think not only just for the security industry, I mean across the tech industry, that's a challenge, but specifically here where it matters that we get the data we need to get on time, right? We're getting the right alerts at the right time, right visibility at the right time. Because as you do, you mentioned from DevOps all the way through to production and response, you've got now one platform for visibility, for alerting, for hardening the platforms, monitoring the platforms. I mean, all that really does make a difference when it comes to security because it's giving you that true view of what's going on in one place without having to jump from tool to tool, train a whole bunch of people on a bunch of different stuff. It becomes that centralized thing. So I'm really excited about what Palo Alto is doing here in this space. And then you mentioned the bite-sized nature. So that becomes the challenge then, is right now I've got this platform. It can do all these things. But I can't afford to buy all of that right now, right? I mean, my budget is X. I mean, we all run into this every year. I've got this much money, and I need to solve this problem. And if we come in and say, okay, here's a Palo Alto platform, and it's $1 million a month, right? No one's going to buy it, right? So talk about that bite-sized nature that you mentioned. How are customers adopting the platform as they make this change? What are you seeing?
So, a few things. One, I would just tell you that we've done the same thing with cloud native applications as we've done with every other application we're trying to protect. Applications, what are they? They're wrappers. They're wrappers for sensitive data that the company cares about, whatever industry they're in. And there's probably, the more important it is, the tighter the flavors of compliance are there to protect the adversary from getting access to it. Well, what does a market do when it's nascent in the beginning of a market? It looks for what they consider to be the best of breed. That's what the buyers would say, best of breed solutions in specific niche areas. We call those point solutions later as the market matures. And so it's exacerbated, the problem you were outlining, Rocky, is exacerbated because if you look at DevOps, they have different scanning technology, different results. And then if you look at the people in build, so the cloud security folks, and then the people in runtime, and then the people in the SOC, the people at endpoint, everyone's got different technologies. And those different technologies have different scanners. And those different scanners have different ways to categorize. And so now it's no surprise, you've got everybody arguing about, well, what is a vulnerability? What is the actionable intel? And it creates a lot of issues. So I'll list some of the things that we do to free people from some of the challenges that point solutions bring to bear, and I'll get back into the how they can buy in bite-sized chunks. Everything I'm going to talk about is bite-sized chunks. There are solutions in specific areas. You can buy one, none, or all of these, or three of these, right? So the first is, if you look at how, you've probably heard of CSPM, right? Cloud Posture Security Management. A lot of people know that. It's a space that got on the map, quite frankly, because of Log4j. Because Log4j hit in, I think it was about 2021, and the board came to the CIO or the CISO and said, hey, do we have an issue in the cloud? I don't know. Well, where are our cloud native applications? Great question. How many are there? Don't know. Oh, well, maybe we should find that out. So that's really the CSPM. And then they turned on the scanning and they got like a plethora of vulnerabilities. So what? Well, nobody wants a plethora of vulnerabilities. They want actionable intel. Oh, so now we're talking about how do we delineate between SEV 1, 2, 3, categorization, customization in there. So that's really what CSPM was. And the first thing that we do is we say, look, because we have a platform, we can see vulnerabilities all the way through third-party SBOM code. So that's at the beginning. We call it shift left. The market calls it shift left. We can see it when you're in pre-production. That's CSPM. Every vendor can do that. I think that's probably the race to the bottom in commoditization is CSPM, by the way, in this particular market. And then we can see what happens in production. And what that means is we see things like in memory attacks. Memory attacks, I don't know if you know this, 52% of the successful attacks on containers are in memory. You can only see that in runtime because that's where memory exists. And there's a myriad of others. So the first thing is, because we tie them together, we're able to see when nobody else can. But we will start at any one of the specific arenas to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely number one. I mean, it's kind of three major tenets to good cloud security, right? One, know everything that's going on inside your environment. Well, you can't do that, to your point, right? CSPM was born because, oh yeah, you're right. We don't have any idea how big our cloud environments are. We don't know where all these containers sit. There's all these questions that we just don't know because we're moving fast in the cloud. And so, yeah, it helped solve this problem. It's one of those, like, SIM's the same thing, right? SIM is, we've got to gather these log data and start analyzing it, looking for anomalies, all that kind of stuff, so that we can see what's going on for real inside our environments. And that's for sure one of the major tenets of good cloud security is we got to know what's going on, what's good, what's normal, what's bad, right?
If you naturally think about it, if you were a security professional and trying to protect the information for your brand, whatever that would be, and you saw something nefarious and it was in production, high risk, high probability, you probably want to stop it. Well, that's the second part of what we offer, which is the ability to stop in production. Agent, thin client, whatever it is, there's many ways to do it, and we have a specific rollout process which makes it easy to do against policy. So that's the second thing. Again, another solution to another problem, something that you can buy later or buy directly at the beginning when we're scoping out what the problems we're going to solve for them. And then what naturally happens, Rocky, after we're stopping something. Are we done? We have to fix the source of that vulnerability. So now we're going back to code. And so that's the next thing that, if you think about it, if you have piece solutions, you don't have context from code to cloud or from cloud to code. So now if we see something nefarious and it's in production, how are we going to know what to tell dev to fix it? Remember, people have been developing cloud native applications for 14 years. That developer could be long gone. But with us, because we have the platform, we have context, we're able to say, here's the developer, the data was entered in the line of code. So we're able to take mean time to repair from the average industry of 6 days down to hours, just because we're able to get them directly over the target.
Yeah, that's huge.
Just a few other things I would say, and I know we'll move on to other questions, is that we also accelerate for development. I did a presentation on stage yesterday, and they were like, "Well, can you accelerate what DevOps is doing and have security at the same time?" It's like, yes, you actually can, and you can because if you're in dev, they enter the code into a build phase, right? So we're talking about IAC. Well, if they don't know what the policies are in production and in build, how do they know that it's not going to come back to them? And when it comes back, they have to stop the project they're working on, go to something new. With us, we have a 67% reduction in the amount of time it takes development to push out new features because we can show them, hey, this will or will not be compliant. So we're pushing compliance, we're pushing security, we're de-risking all the way up into third-party SBOM and code
That's
security.
huge. Yeah, because that's I mentioned the first tenet. See, know everything that's going on inside your environments. You listed it as see. You're talking about seeing what's going on. What I call the third tenet is leveraging automation, code-driven infrastructure, code-driven security to make things harder earlier on in the process and integrate security into the process as we build, rather than trying to come back later and say, okay, now that this is in production, let's go fix a bunch of stuff, right? And
Yes.
so that's another core tenet, I think, of good security practice. So yeah, it's super important you guys are able to reduce that mean time to response, not just response, but also to real resolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is super important.
And you mentioned it when you said you were talking a little bit about the healthy appreciation I have now for AI that I necessarily didn't in this particular context before I joined Palo Alto Networks. So there's really many things, but two things that I think I would mention just because they're very developed. One, we have honeypots all over the world. So what? Well, if you have honeypots, you're seeing the heuristic of attacks, what assets they're going after, and you're seeing the attack vectors they're using to be successful, right? Okay. So what? Well, some portion of those will not have a CV attached to it. So it's an unknown vulnerability, right? We're able to leverage AI to look at what assets they're going after, what industry specific attacks are happening, and we can, in near real time, take something that's unknown and bring it directly back to our own platform and harden it in near real time. So we're offering a more secure solution just because of that data. So that's one of 2 points relative to AI. And then the second thing is, and I have to always preface this so people don't wince, we are bringing automation to fixing vulnerabilities. Well, I never want automation. I always want a person involved. I totally agree and I totally understand. But AI will see patterns on specific vulnerabilities and fixes for specific vulnerabilities and be able to say, hey, this is a known fix on a very similar or like vulnerability, and it can be automated. Now, most companies still want somebody in the process, and I don't blame them for that. But over time, when you see these patterns, and AI does a great job of pattern recognition, you get to see things that can actually be automated. And so there's a psychological factor that doesn't necessarily have to do a lot with technology there, but we're making a lot of advances in that area.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think it's one of those areas where we can get a lot by using AI to not only create responses, create new code, right? Just harden things. But then there's this whole element that you hit on, which is kind of unique here, which is using that to do pattern recognition of, anomalous bad behavior through these honeypots, bring things up faster, bring them earlier to our customers. That's a huge improvement that you would never be able to do without leveraging AI, right? There's just no way. You'd take an army of people, days, weeks of time to just figure that out and then say, oh yeah, this is a real thing. Now let's take it to a product. Let's build a bunch of code. And, 6 months later, you've got a resolution for it. Well, that's not good enough anymore, as in today's industry and what the advanced threats we're facing, which means we got to do things like that. So that's really exciting. It's really good to hear.
The other thing that, because you asked a great question at the onset of our conversation here, which is, so what have basically, hey, what have you learned in this space that maybe you didn't know before coming in? One of the things is I used to look at CNAPP, Cloud Native Application Protection Platform, talk about word salad. Thank you, Gartner. But, I used to look at it as its own category. And I used to say that some of the categories under it were cells merging, but CNAPP is merged with the SOC. And what do I mean by that? Well, The SOC manages the business. So the CISO, through their SIMs, manage their business on protecting, whether it's servers or it's endpoints or it's applications or it's cloud applications or it's browser, whatever the endpoint is. By the way, cloud native applications are also considered an endpoint, right? So these are different attack vectors, and they should all be correlated in one central area. Now, the big phrase today is data lake. Some people are trying to sell data lakes for CNAP, and I think they've missed it. Why? Because they want to drive the business. They want to protect the assets. They want to show that they're getting better over time. Well, how do they do that today? They do that through whatever their existing SIM is in their SOC, right? Well, it might not surprise you that a lot of these CISOs in their SIM through their SOC don't have visibility into what's happening in cloud native applications. And yet, these are now the wrappers of today for all of that sensitive data, right? Business critical, mission critical applications. So, and so that's one way. If you look at it the other way from the cloud folks, a lot of the cloud people 5 years ago were not security people.
Yeah.
They're people that have prowess in cloud and happen to be cyber people, but they're not traditional cybersecurity purists. So now what we're doing by bringing endpoints and servers and network and firewalls and all that together and correlating it in XIM, which is our SIM, stitching it together before it's actually in there in a very unique way, has really brought the SOC and the cloud together. And I think that's a really key piece we call it the come together program, and it's basically bringing SOC and the cloud together. So
Yeah. No, it's super important. I mean, it's exactly what you said, right? You want to have this forensic data. And a lot of times we're just not getting all that information together. And so that's where, being able to get the CSPM data, get the CNAP data, bring that together with the SOC data, do the analytics on it, leverage AI to really bring forward, what really happened, when did it happen, how did it happen? You mentioned earlier, the ability to say, hey, this developer on this day at this time, right? That kind of context is so critical to really solving security problems and making them go away permanently, right? Not just, hey, yeah, we closed that door, but we forgot to lock it, right? No, we need to lock it, we need to shut it, we need to build a brick wall and make sure that we don't let anything else through that same path. So yeah, super, super exciting to hear what you guys are doing in that space. And so, as we get closer to the end of our time here, Chris, what else would you highlight as just market trends, things that customers need to be thinking about, just again, as you've been there for the last few months here, what's changed? There's been even changes, I know, just in the last few months there. So what are you seeing? What else are you seeing in your role there?
well, I think where the market is largely going, and I don't think this because I see things. I think this because I hear things and I listen to people who have a whole lot more data and intellect than I do. But what I'm hearing is people care a lot about where the data is and how the data is being processed and correlated and getting more data into a central area. Some call it a data lake, some call it still the SIM and the SOC. It doesn't matter to me, the nomenclature. But I think if I hear correctly, the market is stating we want the ability to go get the data we want, to query against the data, regardless of where it's at. And all the assets that we're trying to protect should be correlated, categorized, processed in this area so we can get the answers we want. By the way, leveraging AI. And in what happens and what's born out of that? Well, if you control the data and the way the data is presented and how the data is protecting the enterprise, you still care about what's feeding that, whether it's a data lake or a SIM, but you care less. So I think where the market is going is the endpoint protection systems and the monitoring systems will continue to be an arms race for who's best to dominate market share and better serve customers. But I think it's going to be the supporting actor to the data lakes and the information that are going to be in the SOC.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, one, we need that data. Um, and so it doesn't really matter where it comes from, but we need it, right? And then really where we're getting the security response and the ability to handle the threats that we're seeing today is in that central, data lake, and do the forensics in a meaningful way in a short period of time. That's a huge challenge, I think, for a lot of companies. And so that's where I for sure see AI really making us more effective as cyber professionals, helping our customers cut through the noise, at a faster rate. Talking yesterday with a bunch of folks in the government space about security and security response and the importance of forensics
Mm.
when bad actors do find a way in. A lot of times, as you know, it didn't start yesterday, right? It started with this little attack 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And most of the time, in the SIM world, we store data for a year. And so after a year, that data's gone. Well, then we don't really know how it all started and where it all came from. And so we're just starting to have these conversations about how, we need to store this data longer. We need to
Yeah.
continue to retain it for longer periods of time so that we can do better forensics. But then just imagine being a SOC analyst and going, yeah, we had this issue.
Oh,
Here's
no.
12 terabytes of data to go sort through. You can't do that, right?
That's why the correlation's key. And stitching the information before it's actually in the SIM is key.
Exactly. And so that's where we're seeing AI really get integrated into these tools. But then along with that, and I mentioned there the little teaser at the beginning, we're also seeing huge adoption of Gen AI, not just in the security realm, but all over our organizations and every layer, every application. And so that's a growing area of concern. And I know Palo Alto is doing some neat things there. You guys have been doing a lot with Google. SADA, obviously, a huge Google partner. And you mentioned AI SPM early on. So Google and SADA SADA joining Palo Alto as a launch partner for your Gen AI security posture management. It's
Mm-hmm.
like the cloud security posture management thing,
Yeah,
right? Like, hey, what
AISP.
are we going to
Yeah.
call this? But we're super excited about that. I mean, it is a huge need. We're helping customers innovate with Gen AI every day of the week, and this is always part of the conversation. But
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like as I talk to customers and hear what customers are doing, that we're doing the same thing we've always been doing with security, which is, yeah, let's build this. It's cool. We built it. It's in production. Oh yeah, that security thing. We should probably go look at that now, right? And so I'm excited about what you guys are doing in this space because it will add this layer of visibility into what are we building, where's the data going, what platforms, what services are our internal people using on a day-to-day basis, and should they be using those things? I mean, that's a huge challenge
Um,
in and of itself. And so what you guys are doing in this security posture space, I'm excited about, and there'll be a ton more coming out about that, I'm sure, in the days to come. But Chris, this has been a pleasure, man. Thank you for joining me today and sharing just kind of what you've seen in the industry and your expertise with our listeners. So thanks again for coming on.
Well, Rocky, thank you for having me. Audience, thanks for listening. And it wouldn't be right for me to leave without a call to action. So, if you want to know more about what we can do to help your customers, just understand we have a rich history from our CEO on down with Google, and we're very excited about the relationship with SADA. You can go actually to the marketplace. You can go to your reps within SADA, and also you can reach out to us or go to our website to find out how we can support your efforts in supporting your customers.
If you want to hear more, paloalto.com, right? Easy peasy.
Absolutely.
Go there, check it out. And yeah, Chris, thanks again, man. Appreciate it, and excited to continue working with you guys in the days to come.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @Cloud and Clear and our website, sada.com.